The death penalty is back on the table in Kenya. President William Ruto has just made a shocking and controversial proposal. He wants to execute convicted drug traffickers. This is a seismic shift in Kenya's legal and moral landscape. It targets the kingpins, the big players, the wealthy cartel bosses who have long operated with impunity. But is this a necessary war on a devastating crisis, or a dangerous step backward for human rights? We're diving deep into the story that has the entire nation talking. Here's what happened. On a recent official visit to the coastal city of Mombasa, a region severely plagued by drug abuse and trafficking, President William Ruto dropped a bombshell. He directed the National Authority for the Campaign Against Alcohol and Drug Abuse, NACADA, to immediately review the cases of all convicted drug traffickers currently serving sentences. His goal? To identify the kingpins, the big fish. And then, he stated, his administration would present a petition to the courts. A petition seeking the death penalty for these individuals. This wasn't an offhand comment. It was a direct, presidential order with a clear objective: use the ultimate punishment to dismantle the networks fueling addiction and crime in communities across Kenya. This matters because it directly challenges a decades-long moratorium on executions and ignites a fierce debate about justice, deterrence, and the state's power over life and death in the face of a national scourge. Let's get into the key details. President Ruto's directive was specifically aimed at traffickers convicted of dealing in hard drugs. We're talking about heroin, cocaine, and methamphetamines, the really destructive stuff. He made a critical distinction, emphasizing this was for the barons and not the small-time users or peddlers. This is crucial. He's going after the supply chain's top, not its bottom. Now, for the legal context. The death penalty is technically still on the books in Kenya. It exists as a punishment for serious crimes including murder, treason, and armed robbery. And yes, under the Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Control Act, it is also a stipulated penalty for drug trafficking. However, and this is the massive catch, Kenya has maintained an official moratorium on executions since 1987. The last judicial executions were carried out in 1987. In practice, death sentences are automatically commuted to life imprisonment. The president's move seeks to actively break that 37-year moratorium for this specific crime category. He cited the devastating impact of drugs, calling them a big problem that is killing our children. His logic is one of supreme deterrence: hit the financiers where it hurts most to cripple the entire trade. This directive was issued to NACADA's chairman, Stephen Marori, and its chief executive officer, Anthony Omrikwa, putting the agency at the center of this fiery legal and ethical storm. The impact on ordinary Kenyans is profound and multi-layered. First, consider the families in neighborhoods ravaged by addiction. In communities in Mombasa, NIROHB's estates, and across the country, parents are burying children. Siblings are watching brothers and sisters waste away. The social fabric is torn apart by crime driven by addiction, theft, violence, prostitution. Economically, the drain is immense. Household incomes are swallowed by drugs. Productivity is lost. Healthcare systems are burdened by treating addiction-related illnesses. For every kingpin living in luxury, thousands of families are plunged into poverty and despair. If this policy leads to actual executions, it will send a chilling message. Some citizens, exhausted by the destruction, may feel a sense of long-awaited justice. They may believe that finally, the powerful, untouchable figures behind their pain will face a consequence equal to the harm they've caused. It could provide a psychological sense of closure and retribution for communities that feel abandoned. Conversely, the social implication of the state taking life is immense. It normalizes a form of violence as a solution. It could deepen societal divisions between those who see it as necessary and those who see it as barbaric. There's also a risk of misplaced focus. Critics argue that the root causes, poverty, lack of opportunity, corruption that allows trafficking to flourish, remain unaddressed. The economic impact of a successful crackdown could be positive in the long term: healthier workforces, safer tourism destinations like the coast, and reduced spending on law enforcement and rehabilitation. But the immediate impact is a nation grappling with the weight of a life and death decision about its own values. To understand the full gravity, we must look at Kenya's historical relationship with the death penalty. As stated, the last hangings were in 1987. Since then, Kenya has inched toward abolition in practice, if not in law. The 2010 Constitution reaffirmed the right to life but did not abolish the death penalty, leaving it as a discretionary punishment. However, courts have become increasingly reluctant to impose it. In 2017, The Supreme Court even declared the mandatory death penalty for murder unconstitutional, granting judges discretion. This created a paradox. The death penalty exists, but the state refuses to carry it out, leading to a backlog of death row inmates whose sentences are essentially life terms. President Ruto's directive shatters this uneasy status quo. It demands the state machinery reactivate a mechanism it has refused to use for generations. It forces judges, prison officials, and the public to confront the physical reality of execution, the gallows at Kamiti maximum security prison that have been silent for 37 years. This isn't just a policy change, it's a potential reactivation of a dormant, terrifying apparatus. The international context cannot be ignored. Kenya positions itself